back, and then to have to undo that kind of stuff. That's how damaging it is. Like when their behavior tries to be controlled, it really messes with them.
We're supposed to upgrade from our parents.
Yeah.
So and 7 will upgrade from you as well. And then her children will do the same thing. That's the idea, but not everybody does. Some people downgrade because they're so deeply affected by their childhood trauma, that they either become just like their parents or maybe worse because they're angry and mad and frustrated, and then their poor kids will end up downgrading too.
So the good thing about healing ancestral trauma, though, is you get to fix it forwards and backwards. So I've noticed that there is a little bit of an echo backwards, but not as much as there is forwards. But you can definitely see it immediately when you do ancestral healing work. So
The Intelligent Soul, where we have interesting guests that will change not only your life but your soul's journey. Sit back and relax and enjoy the show.
So much for having me on, Holly. My name is Kirsten Rohde Sandifer. I'm an intuitive healer. I also have a daughter who is 7 years old, and her name is Seven, coincidentally. She is a blue avian hybrid, meaning she came into this life remembering who she was and not being completely human, as she came to me and said when she was 5 years old. So I've been an intuitive since almost since I can remember, pretty much. I remember getting messages from Spirit when I was 4 years old about my grandfather going into the hospital. And I told my parents about this, and I had just had a vision like that he was going to the hospital, and it was very profound. And so I kept bugging him to call my grandmother, and turned out he was fine that day. The next day he ended up going into the hospital, and my mom came into my room and she was like, where did you get that information? And I just said, I don't know, and she told me that the devil made it happen. So I turned that off for a long time, pretty much until college, until I had an experience where I got attacked by an entity, which I realize now happened to me so I would wake myself back up. So I believe everything is self, and everything that happens to us is designed. The universe designed it so it helps us out. So I don't see that as a bad experience. It was at the time, and I didn't really understand it, but I do now. So my parents have since changed their beliefs. They're very open with who Seven is now, and thankfully they still don't really understand it all, but they come to us when they need healing work or anything like that, which is really beautiful. Not everybody in my family has come around to it, but most people have. So she'd been having experiences, from when she was 2.5 and we lived in Utah. She was being visited in her room. Crazy things that they're so unbelievable you can't even really talk about them unless people have experienced the same things. But I didn't really know what to do. I was terrified, and I just wanted it to stop when it first started happening. And it wasn't until I spoke with a woman who'd been a lifelong contactee, and she told me, listen, she chose this. If this is happening to her, then it's because she chose this, so it's not a bad thing. And she said, rarely is it of a malicious energy. And so that really helped me kind of calm down and look at things from a different perspective. She was coming to me in the mornings, and she was telling me she went to Mars and she went to these different planets. She was doing healings on these what appeared to be gray hybrid children. And I didn't quite know what to make of it. I never told her she was incorrect. I never did that. I didn't say that's not right. I was just like, okay. I was kind of fascinated, but, and she was very serious about it. And she was, this is when she was really getting into her healing abilities. And then a couple of years after that, kind of everything stopped. We moved to Texas, and we moved back in with my parents for a little while after my divorce from her father. And everything just kind of slowed down and stopped happening, so we could kind of just live a normal life. And then when we moved from Texas out here, things kind of started ramping up again. And she started talking about it more with me again. And that was when she finally came to me and said, Mom, I'm not completely human like you are. And I laughed at first because I was like, okay, what are you? And then the look on her face, like when I did that, it just reminded me of everything that happened to me. And I was like, I'm not going to treat sorry. This is the first time I really talked about this.
This is okay, because we want to talk to StarSeed moms, and they may have been going through exactly what you're going through. Yeah.
And she just looked at me with so much hope in her eyes that I would understand who she was. And I told her, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I laughed. And I said, go ahead. And it was like in that moment, you know, you have a flash of everything that's ever happened. And it just sort of made sense.
You as a child.
For her, like since she was born, like everything that had happened to her, it was kind of like I had this moment in between when we were talking of like just all these different images of everything that's happened, you know, the stuff in her room at night and all of the different things, and her pulling headaches out of my nose. And I was just like, oh my God, like it dawned on me, like, okay, there is something different here. And so I listened to her, and we stayed up that night pretty late talking. And I told her, okay, I will never judge you. Like, just be yourself. I just want you to be yourself, and I just want you to be happy. And we hugged, and it was such a beautiful moment that night. I'll never forget that. And she came to me a couple months later, and she said, Mom, I have to speak up about this. I have to let other people know, because there's other kids out there like myself. And we are supposed to help change things for people. And I can't do that if I can't get to the other kids. And I was like, baby, what are you suggesting? She was like, well, I think we should, you know, like you should let me have a YouTube channel or TikTok channel. And I was like, oh, baby, I was like, I don't know. People can be very mean. And it was so cute. She was just like, no, I got it. Like, I'm okay. I know who I am now. Mm-hmm. And it was just such a beautiful thing for a little girl to say. She was so confident. She was like, I don't care about any of that. Like, it was just in her heart that she wanted to help people. And so I said, okay, all right. And I sat with my guides that night, and I asked them to tell me, you know, if this was the right thing. And they said, yes, this is what's going, and they kind of showed me what was going to happen. They said other parents will come out like yourself. Like, this won't take very long, about a year. And it was about a year when I saw Kelly the Magic Medium and Bray speaking out. And coincidentally, he's also Blue Avian. It was just very, very synchronistic. And there was like kind of those moments that I was like, wow, okay, this is all falling into line. And there have been so many people that so many parents that we've been able to talk to and work with and help out that are going through similar things like this, because you can't speak about this in your community. You can't go to counselors, therapists. I mean, geez, they would have us locked up, you know. And I studied psychology, you know. I went to TCU and I got my bachelor's in psychology, and I started studying on my master's in marriage and family counseling. And then I kind of decided this wasn't the path for me, just because of all the things back in the day. I won't say how old I am, but they wouldn't let you talk about meditation and things like that, which that didn't really align with what I wanted to do. So I just started doing my own thing. But crazy, which in this family, this weird and words like that are actually a good thing, you know, so we turn them into a positive thing if people say things like that to us. But is the exact opposite from what we are. But I realized some of the things that we're saying, yes, are very unbelievable until it happens to you.
Yeah. How would you not only give advice to parents who believe that they have StarSeed or Indigo children, and maybe you can tell us a difference between that as well. We'll just start right there. So,
from my understanding and from what Sevens explained, we are all starseeds. We are all not completely human. Her genetic makeup has a higher percentage of extraterrestrial DNA, I guess, and I can't prove this. This is just, I'm just going off what she said. And so Indigo children they're a more specific race of humans that are just more empathetic, and they're more in tune. So I guess, yes, they can keep this next generation can be considered Indigo children, starseeds. I do think they're very similar, but I do think there's a little bit of distinction because the Indigo children that I believe Edgar Casey was even talking about would be more people that have had challenges like autism and things like that, but they're so empathetic and so in tune. This is my understanding of it. But for advice, let your kids be who they are. Don't try to shape them into what you want them to be. With 7, when she wants to talk about stuff that she wants to talk about with ETs and stuff like that, fine, absolutely. And I support her 100% in that. But I don't try to, and I used to do this when it first started happening, like, when she was going on TikTok, I used to try to like, oh, let's do a video. And then I could see she was kind of getting turned off by it. And I was just like, oh my gosh, okay. This is me trying to push her to do something. So it's just organic. Let them be who they want to be when they want to be that. And also don't tell them that's not true, you're lying, or that's made up. Because the crazy thing is these kids know the difference between a lie and the truth. They're not programmed to lie. This is something adults do. This is really not a kid thing. They know the difference, and they have an active imagination, but they know the difference. Everything that 7 said to me, when she knows when she's telling me like a story, when we're doing things, there's a big difference in the way she communicates it, and the imagination is, either way, it's so important to helping them develop these gifts. Because without an imagination, you're not going to be able to really tap into your intuition. They're one and the same. So everybody that says it's just imagination, well, yes, and it's more than that. Because these kids that are having these experiences, they can't all be imaginary. They can't. So many kids are going through it, and then the kids speaking light language. This is not coincidental. It's just our parents thought it was babbling or whatever. But there's things with the cadence and the way that the words are emphasized through frequencies. They're the most connected to source because they just came from there, so they get it.
Have you ever heard of Mateus de Safanzo? Okay, yeah. So for people who haven't heard of him, you can find his work on Gaia, and of course Gaia TV. But of course you can go to YouTube and find him. And he's in his late 30s now, and he's someone who has said that he remembers all of his past lifetimes, and none of them have been on Earth. They've been on other planets, in some of the planets in Orion, in the constellation of Orion, I believe. And he distinctly, and things are happening now. He's hooking up with, like, we're talking.
Oh, he's huge. He's huge now. Yeah.
Oh yeah, he's massive now. But people like Edward Grant, who is an anthropologist and looks at the pyramids deeply, he's hooking up with all those people that are starting to find proof of what he has talked about. When you have a hieroglyphic that looks like a reptilian type with wings in Egypt, and then you have another one in Mexico that looks exactly the same. That was done probably in 30,000 BC. How did that happen? Like they weren't traveling like that. This exact same hieroglyphic comes from, and it looks very alien-like. So if anyone's interested in looking at an adult version of people like
7, absolutely.
There's someone there and he's quite fascinating. Of course, all of them fly to Egypt constantly because that seems to be where, in the pyramids, where the proof is. The other thing I wanted to ask you is, when she said, I visit Mars often, how old was she?
She was about 3 years old at that time, I would say. Yeah, she was about 3.
So did she know Mars?
No.
Did she even know the word Mars, that even though it was a planet? I wouldn't think so.
Nope.
So your
that was
first
the
thing
other
was
thing.
probably like, Mars. Like, was she watching, a TV show that was like, these were the planets of the...
No, she wasn't. Like, she watched like YouTube songs, videos of songs that were in German when she was that age, because they were just kind of things, but it was always with my supervision. I didn't just let her watch things. And she went to daycare, but this was very, like, very structured daycare. That was like, they didn't have screen time or anything like that, and they certainly weren't going over these things. They're just kids playing together. But I also noticed a lot of the descriptions about things like the grays, the way she described them, there's no possible way that she could have known what they look like. And we went through photos because when I asked her, I'm like, is it this? And she was very specific. No, 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 that's the one. And I was like, oh, okay. I mean, so there's a lot of things as far as, I believe her 100%. I mean, that's obviously, but, and I don't need other people to, it's fine. But, you know, so people need proof. It's like, okay, I've had my share of proof with her. There's no doubt about it.
You don't need it. You don't need to validate it. And we don't need to really, you know, a new download I got recently is that we don't want to invalidate other people that are non-believers or
absolutely.
We're not on the same page.
It's not my place to do that.
We need all, this is what makes the world go around. We need these differences. We don't have to be mean to each other. I totally get that. That's upsetting when people are disagree and then they're mean at the same time. That's unnecessary. But we do have, I mean, a lot of people don't, I'm an astrologer, a lot of people don't believe that works. You know, they think, and there was a time I didn't think it worked either. That's how I became more of a believer. Actually, I think if the more skeptic you are,
absolutely. I think it's healthy to have a good amount of skepticism because I'm an evidential-based psychic, so and healer, so it's based on evidence. Like if there's not a way that I can prove that this is correct, well, in my line of work, that's not super effective. So I go with what works and what I can prove. You know, there's a lot of things that I can't, but in my own line of work, this is the way that I do things too.
So I'll tell people, I don't know how I found 7, and I don't even know how I found Bray, but then I started following both at the same time, and then I started following both of you as mothers as well. It coincidentally or interesting, well, it's divine intervention. You two met because you both have StarSeed children.
We haven't met in person, but yes, we've had many conversations.
One from you, and I did a reading for you and 7 a couple months ago, I think now, and sure enough, the planet Uranus, that's what we call it in astrology. In humans, they call it Uranus, but we call it Uranus. And it would be interesting what the star people call it. But I saw Uranus very strong in her chart, and I also have seen it it's very, very strong in your chart. It's very strong in mine as well. And that means that we don't frequent Earth. And when we don't frequent Earth often, right away we feel like misfits. We feel like people don't think like us. They don't process things the way they do. We're less emotional based. We use emotions for intuition and guiding our intuitive side, but we're actually quite confused about how people are guided by pure emotions only. Strategic thinking, critical thinking, and I don't mean like criticizing, it's like a critical thinking mind, scientific. Very much like Spock. I always tell people, you ever watch Star Trek and you watch Spock?
That's so funny. Totally.
You know, this is not logical. People that are emotionally based are those people, those keyboard warriors that go, you know, you're a loser. Like, holy dude, get out of your heart. Like you're very emotional. You're not thinking with your noggin there. So I found that really, really interesting that I saw that about her. And I feel that I think you can really benefit by helping people, other people that may have children like this. I know the first question they're going to ask is, what about school? Is she that outspoken at school? What reaction does she get at school? Because that's what everybody, what are the kids going to think? What are the teachers going to think? I mean, maybe you should look at what you think about what the kids are going to think. That's conscious parenting, right?
So what I've always told 7 is you do what makes you feel right, baby. You know, like if you want to tell people, you do that. And she asked me, well, what, you know, like, what do you think people are going to say? And I said, I don't know, because we're in a different day and age now. Yeah. So she tried it when she first went to school, and it was met with a little bit of hesitation. But she handled it perfectly, and she just was like, okay. Oh, she did.
What did she do?
She just went, okay, whatever. She's like, because I said aliens aren't real, and she was like, okay. But like, she just laughed. Then she thought it was completely ridiculous. She was like, okay, that these people don't actually even believe that we exist. Wow. So she just went on to the next thing
Love that
because she's
approach.
so secure about who she is. She was just like,
Exactly. She didn't
okay,
question who she was. She questioned who
mm-mm.
they were.
Yeah,
What? You
yeah.
don't believe in it? Oh,
Hmm.
that sucks to be you.
So, and it was funny, like I remember making a video with her on TikTok like a while ago, and I think she was like 4.5, 5 years old, and and I said, "What do you think about people who don't believe in aliens?" And she was like, "Okay, you'll see." She was like, "You'll see." Like,
Yeah,
so it
when
was
time will
just, it was
come.
very funny. But so what she's kind of done is she's still herself at school. She just doesn't really talk about it. If somebody brings it up, she's
Hmm.
happy to share.
Hmm.
But she really enjoys like connecting with kids like Bray and other people who are StarSeed. That like it brings her so much joy because she can be herself and she can fully be herself and in her power and talk about who she is
Yeah.
without worrying she's going to offend somebody.
If
So
anyone gets a chance, they have to go to your TikTok. Let me know, let everyone know what that is because there
sure.
is where they meet, like on video,
Yeah,
like this.
yeah.
And oh my God, they would have bing, 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 bing. The two of them
It was so
talking was
beautiful to watch.
incredible.
Hmm.
How can people find you
Sure, it's
and her?
at Psychic Kirsten, PsychicKirsten,
Yeah,
and
that'll be on the link below.
perfect. Yeah, and so the other thing I noticed is
And
that
your TikTok, they can get from there as well.
Psychic Kirsten. So if you go to TikTok, I don't know the actual URL, but if you just
I
type
think
in
it's Psychic
TikTok
Babes.
Psychic, so no. So I mean the if you go to TikTok and you type in Psychic Kirsten, you'll find it. The real
Oh, okay.
Psychic Babes is not anymore because I changed my name for the TikTok shop. So that's
Okay,
Seven Up the
okay,
Stars,
okay,
but
okay.
that's me.
So Psychic Kirsten, I want people to know it's a C, it's K-I-R.
STEN.
Yeah,
Yeah.
not K-R-I. It's not Kristen,
Hmm.
it's Kirsten. Okay,
Yeah.
very good. But that'll all be in the link below as well too. So how did that go with the two of them talking?
Oh my God, amazing! Like for one, Seven looked at him and she said, "We look alike." And then she
They
like said,
do.
she was like, "He was my brother on the plane." She was like, "I think he's my brother." And
Mhm.
she actually she didn't said I think he was. She was like, he was my brother on the planet. And I was I was kind of like, "Are you sure?" And then I looked at them. I'm like, "Wow!" And then in the comments, people were like, "They look alike." And
They
so
do.
that I was really looking, I was like, "Wow, this is kind of crazy." Um, they talk alike too. They're both very sensitive people. Like they don't do well when people are mean to them. Like they just don't know how to handle it. I think because they
Hmm.
don't come from that environment.
Hmm.
Everybody's just accepted for who they are and
Hmm.
encouraged. So it's kind of like odd, and I know Bray is homeschooled, and hopefully that will happen with Seven here soon. I'm a single parent, so haven't had been fortunate to have that yet. But this is what I'm putting out to the universe, so I'm sure it will happen
Yeah.
soon.
Yeah, we
But
gotta still make money in this
mm-hmm,
matrix world that we live in. How can someone recognize? I think it's very helpful that you're psychic
mm-hmm,
as well, and
mm-hmm,
that you're intuitive and you're a healer. So you're already open. You're also, it is helpful. I know it doesn't feel, I think this will be helpful for some people. You went through some pain. You went through a lot of pain
mm-hmm,
being a child like this, being with parents that were closed-minded about it at one point, and even society, because that was a day and age that you're raised to. There wasn't so much of that.
mm-hmm.
Social media that was spreading that kind of awareness. And that's helpful because a child like yours needs to come to a parent like you because of what you already are aware of in your life experience that you have. But how can someone recognize if they have a child with this type of a gift?
Sure. So the first thing is you'll often find them looking into areas where, and like pointing like your daughter did, where you can't necessarily see something. I can see energy, so I know what she's referring to. She's doing that, but um, they're often talking to themselves a lot. And when you ask them who you're talking to, no one, because they don't necessarily know that you're going to understand it. If you start open the dialogue with them and you are like, "Oh, who was that? Is that your friend?" Uh, Without implanting those things, they will open up to it because then they don't feel like it's so strange. But usually parents are like, "Who are you talking to? There's nobody there." and then this implants that, and they're like, oh, okay, I'm being shamed for this. So
Right.
that's those are the kinds of ways that you can see if your child. Those are the things that I've noticed that happen overwhelmingly. Also, there are a lot more kids now having experiences with extraterrestrials in the middle of the night. Sevens were in the middle of the night. She was waking up with like things on her arm that looked like surgical scars healed over. And I would ask her, where did this come from? And she said, Omi, which is my mom. We were living in Utah at the time. My mom was in Texas. There was no possible way that could be happening. But again, when I spoke to the same woman who has been a contactee, lifelong contactee, she said they come as somebody you know first, so as not to scare the children.
Okay.
And that really stuck out to me. It didn't happen until later that I found this out, and then it made sense. It was like, oh, okay. And a lot of people were like, well, was she implanted with something? And I was like, I don't think it was that. I think it was just they're checking on her and her DNA and all of the things just to make sure everything's going well, because they don't always know how it's going to work out here on Earth, and they want to make sure that they're safe, you know. So I think it's a little bit of that. I've also noticed that this isn't, unanimous, but a lot of these kids are Rh negative. A lot of them are extremely sensitive to loud noises. They don't like yelling, things like that completely freak them out. And they're just very in tune. And they might see people that have passed away in your life. They might say, oh, Grandpa's here when Grandpa's passed away, things of that nature. They might talk about things that seem completely outside of the scope of what you're used to. And it may seem like imagination at first, but what they're doing is understanding if you're open to this or not. Because part of them knows, okay, they chose, like as Seven says to me all the time, I chose you. Because by the time I had her, I had already gone through all of these tough situations and figured out who I was. And I was super confident in myself. That wasn't always the case, you know. But like I said to her all the time, she teaches me, she's become my biggest teacher. I wasn't always a healer. The healer thing was something that I always wanted to do. It wasn't until I started working with her, we were at the Life Conscious Expo last year, that really this started to unfold for me too. And then it was just like, I would sit down with my guides every day after that and work on my healing stuff. But she opened me up to it. So.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
And so thank you for sharing, what advice would you give parents on how they address it to their family members, to their friends, etc.?
So the first thing, the way that you can kind of, what I always say to parents is, if you want to know what your kid knows, the best way to do that is to kind of pose this question: what's the first memory you have? What do you remember? And because that doesn't limit them, right? Yeah. Like, what do you remember from this life? Okay, or when I asked Seven, what's the first memory you have? She remembered being born. Okay. And then she talks about this in the podcast she did with me too recently. Then she jumped to like being 2.5, 3 years old. That's when it switched on again. So she remembers being born, and then there was this time in between. And then it was like when she started having her contact experience, that's when the light switched back on. So I'm not sure what that means exactly, but advice for talking to other people is challenging, because not everybody is going to understand. But if you are confident in the way that you're parenting your child, and it's healthy, meaning you're allowing your child to be who they are, and you know who you are, and you're doing your own work on healing your traumas, so we're not passing that off to our kids, that's going to resonate with other people too. I always say lead by example, you know, so don't try to tell people how to be. Just be who you are, and that, if that's, you know, whoever that is, that will resonate with people very strongly if it's, you know, if it's authentic.
Yeah, I love that. One of the things that I noticed in charts, because I do a lot of charts for parents, their children, they want to understand, because I was endorsed by Dr. Shefali. I have a lot of Dr. Shefali followers, and she's a conscious parenting expert. You can look her up. and they're always they want to be the best parent. I mean, that's why they follow her. And of course, her teaching is to be the best parent is to try not to be try so hard to be the best parent, because that creates a lot of expectations on your children, because it's skewed through your desires of what you didn't get as a child. So you want to give that to your children. However, I find that when I'm doing these readings for the children, right away, I will, if they're like 7, I will see ADD, I will see ADHD. Now, I tell people right away, I do not like that term, because what it says, it's a deficit, it's a disorder. And it is nothing of those. It is a multitasking, multifunctioning, multi-curious, multi-questioning person. And they don't fit, the world doesn't fit for them. It's that society has a problem, and the educational system has a problem, because they're trying to put these, you know, round pegs into a square hole, and it just doesn't work. So it's not a problem with the child. But if you want to look at, you know, because there's labels now, that they will have those types of tendencies.
Absolutely correct.
ADHD, yeah. Absolutely. Their mind will wander, so they'll be daydreaming a lot, and you'll think that they're not paying attention, they're not disciplined, they didn't listen to you, and it's because their mind is just gone somewhere else.
Yet they can almost for word recite what you said, because I've done that to 7. Like, are you hearing me? What did I just say? And she'll literally like parrot back to me, and I'm like, oh my gosh, she was doing like 15 other things. How did she get all of that? But somehow they do. They know. Yeah.
7 has, if I remember, she has a Mercury in Aries. And Mercury in Aries, in my Sidereal astrology, and that's not the way it is in Western astrology, it's Eastern, a cross between. But it's someone's mind that thinks very quickly, in the moment, one thing after the other, after the other, after the other, after the other, after the other. And it's literally in that moment. They're not one to ponder it later. They won't think like, oh, my mom said this yesterday. I'm still thinking about it.
Nope.
That's not that. That's not 7.
Nope.
She's thinking about what today.
Yep.
Like literally,
she's very in the moment.
Are you still worried about that thing that happened yesterday? She'd be like, no. God, it's out of my brain. You know.
Nope. That's stuff they learn from us. That is stuff that they learn.
If you did something yesterday and you did it again today, you're like, no, I'm not worried about what you did yesterday, but you did it again today, Mom. And I'm thinking about that now. Right?
Very, very much so. Also, these kids it's very apparent that they are very old souls. They, 7 is so sensitive and so nurturing to other kids, and to me, it's like, whoa, sometimes it's like completely like, who's the mom here? But it's beautiful, because it just is what it is. And so many times, like, we were at a Mayan fire ceremony yesterday, which was really beautiful, Mayan sound healing, and 7, the girl who was doing the sound bath, just looked at us and she was like, oh my God, you guys are so cute, because 7 was going like this to me, and we were holding hands, and like, it's just, people notice, they're like, you guys are just so sweet and so open. And I was like, that's her. It's because she is that way. That's just how she's built. And very old souls, like, they have 15 things going on in their mind, and a lot of times a lot of other people won't necessarily understand what she's saying, but because I've been around her for a long time, I know what she's getting at. And so sometimes people will misinterpret this, like in her TikTok videos. It's like, no, because she's talked about this already 15,000 times around me. I just know what she's trying to say. But she can't often articulate, because her mind's going so fast, and she has such a wealth of knowledge in there. She doesn't always have the words to articulate what she's saying.
Yeah, I want people to imagine as if you've got a radio, because this is how I see 7's mind when I look at her chart. And if you had a radio, and if you could dial into every single station all at once, the radio only allows you to dial into one station at a time, which is kind of the average everyday person. But if you could dial into all of them all at once, you just hear all of this, everything coming at you, and that's what happens in 7's head.
Yep.
So she has to decipher what comes out first and second and third. And so if you ask, I could see as she gets older that when you ask her a question and you're looking for wisdom, she will say there is 100 different answers to that one question.
I can see her saying that too.
When she can receive it, it'll be difficult for her to deliver it. She'll start to learn how to deliver it individually. Like, what do you need to hear? Because I could tell you, a whole encyclopedia.
She already does that with me. When I ask her things like, she will fine tune it to. That's why I thought the reading that you did for us was so spot on. It was just so I've had a couple of readings that really have clarified and solidified the things that are happening. But it was so beautiful, and what you said really helped to demonstrate for me what was happening in her head. Like the radio thing was so spot on. It was just very clear that that's what's happening. And I even asked her about it, and she was like, she started laughing. She was like, that's exactly what it is. She was like, I just have so many things going on that I can't always like fine tune it, but she's getting better at that since we identified that that's what, like she was able to get an example of it. It helped her to fine tune it.
And I don't know if this is what happens to you, but this is what happens with my downloads. And this is what happens when I work with my clients too. And I wrote my book, 101 Answers from the Universe. And I had the hardest time because I was downloading all those answers. Mm-hmm. And I had the hardest time because the way I could explain it is that I would get an imprint. I would get like an imprint, and then I would have to try to decipher what that imprint meant. It was very hard to. It's like a picture. It's like I get.
It's like a code. It's a code, and you get to unwind.
And then I got to translate it.
Yep.
So that the person understands what I got. Like
that's exactly how I get them as well. We're learning how sevens is a little different. The code structure that she gets, hers is through her language with the light language that she delivers. She always knows exactly what she's trying to do, but you can't always translate it word for word. So I think that's the best example of frequency and things like that. How I get them is through pictures. She does get pictures as well, but not as much. For her, it's this knowing, this clairsentience. Yeah. But for everybody, it's different. Some people get clairaudience, some people get messages audibly, which is very rare, but happens. And some people get visions. I get pictures, and then I also have the knowing. So it's for me, it's very distinct. But it took me a long time to learn how to translate those messages. That wasn't immediate. And when people say like psychics are a fraud and things like that, I'm like, no, that's absolutely not the case. So many a times, though, that psychics, they mess up the translation. That's usually what it is. It's not like, let's jump to, they're all like trying to take people's money. That's not what's happening. I think it's truly is a case of like, we're messing up the translation.
I think what people need to understand, I'm a firm believer that we do not come, there's so many other planets inhabited in our universe. And honest to God, if you asked me 15 years ago, even 10 years ago, if I believed in I always said no, because there's no proof. I haven't seen an alien, but now, I believe that when we come, there's a different type of love on other planets, most planets, and it's extremely unconditional. And it's not like people think. People think unconditional is this overwhelming, enormous amount of love. Unconditional means, the way I see it, the downloads I've received, is that if you were on another planet and you and I were in love with each other, and I came up to you and I said, I need to go, I need to do things on my own, I'm finished, you'd be like,
yeah, okay.
Yeah. You'd be fine. It would make no conditions. You'd be like, oh my God, but my needs haven't been met. I have more needs that need to be met.
No, it doesn't work like that.
Nothing like that at all. This planet, it's very conditional. And then on other planets as well too, is that, and I think where 7 comes from, is that if I were to ask a question, the information would come to me from you energetically in one big stamp, and I would get it. You wouldn't have to articulate it, explain it. You wouldn't have to stumble to try to figure out how to tell me, because there's no communication. You would just give me this fusion of knowing, and then I'd be like, oh, I get it. If we wanted to talk, we could talk, but we wouldn't have to. I believe that's the way it is on other planets. So when people come here, but now they have to, and not only that, we have like, I don't know how many different languages on this planet, right? We have to articulate it. I think it's very difficult for people like 7, and even psychic people. The psychic people have this different type of knowing. It's very hard. It's unexplainable, really.
Also, there isn't a such thing as secrets from where she's from, because everything is readable energetically.
Transparent.
So that's not even a thing. So it's a little confusing to her when people are like, she still hasn't quite dialed that in. It's like, people can lie. Like, she understands that now, but when she's still a little bit like, it confuses her when people think like she's not telling the truth, because she's like, can't you see? Like, can't you see this is authentic? And so that's the way that she's shown me. It's an energetic thing, so there aren't any secrets, because you can read everything about who somebody is, what they've done, all of that. It's just all here, right? It's just all available if you want to access it.
I like the idea that you talked about the Mayan. I'm in Mexico now. I'm a nomad. We travel all the time. We spend a lot of times in the winter in Mexico. I'm in the Mayan Riviera, so I have seen, Chichen Itza and all of the ruins, most of the ruins, and hieroglyphics and whatnot. And unfortunately, we can't get close to them because they barred them off because people are trying to climb them and done crazy things like they've done in Egypt. I'm yet to go to Egypt, but this is probably one of the most ancient lands, and you can feel it when you go to these Mayan ruins. We were fortunate to go to the Island of Women. It has a whole history of the strength of women back then and the connection in the tribes back then. And I feel that is more something has happened since then. That's more authentically the way we're supposed to live. And when I listen to, Seven has a language that she speaks. When you go on her YouTube, you'll hear her speak this language. And recently, with my Hindu priest, Vedic, my spiritual guru, I'm learning Sanskrit. So I'm learning to do a Sanskrit meditation every morning. It's very hard to do. And Sanskrit is really old. People don't realize that English is one of the most modern languages. It's not around very long. And as I'm trying to practice this, because not only is Sanskrit just words like English is, it has meaning, it has energy, the tone has energy. If you do it right, it's a sing-song, and that has energy as well, and it's extremely ancient. Hindu is one of the most ancient religions as well. And when I hear hers, I hear it kind of Sanskrit-like.
That's a couple people have said that, and we've never had anybody study it, which I would be absolutely thrilled. That would be fantastic to do. But I do think it is a bit similar, which I think that may be where it stems from. I think that's what I think is going on. And then just like here, there's many dialects, so there are dialects based on where the person is from. But yeah, she at this Mayan fire ceremony that we did yesterday, one of my good friends is training to be a Nahki, which is a Mayan healer, and he trains in Guatemala, and then he was coming back, so he's able to do these ceremonies now, and it was so beautiful, and this fire was so much wisdom and so much history of all the ancestors and the energies. Seven and I were just completely blown away at how beautiful it was. It was like they baked this cake on top of this fire, but it's like this just of offerings and things like that. All these beautiful sand glyphs on it, and it was so phenomenal. But the amount of, you could feel how ancient it was. You could feel it. It was palpable.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. We don't do that enough. I've been to a couple when we had full moons here on the Mayan Riviera last year. Probably doing a sound bath next in 2 weeks. Going to join with a sound bath. We don't do it often enough. It should be ritual. It should be every full moon, every new moon, when it goes from waxing to waning, and even these gatherings, because they've already. Why do we have to scientifically prove everything? But they've already done an enormous amount of peer studies and double-blind studies on how, and if you want to see it, proof of it is the One Field. It's called and the number One Field's whole documentary on proof of all this energy type of healing. And they've taken groups of people that are from all over the world. They're using the internet. They're not even in one room together, but they did do one with one room. And they were able to change the crime rate in different cities. They were able to change, and it was so drastically normal. And then they used actual technology, and they did this water. So this water was in a jar 1 billion miles away, and all these people were in one room. They knew the water was there, and then he put like a probe in the bottle of water and hooked it up to a machine, and he could see the energy of the water. And as soon as the moment that when she was talking about praying to the water, the energy started to shift drastically. And then when they actually did pray to the water for 1 minute, it went drastic change. The water shifted. And this is just people thinking about it that are a million miles away. So if you're in denial that groups of people can create powerful movements within healing within. Joe Dispenza does it all the time. Joe Dispenza, people don't realize it, but when he does he's going to have a retreat here just down the street in about a month. He has healing. Like when you're done that retreat, you have powerful healing abilities, and people come in wheelchairs and have issues, and people will go in a group, and people walk away healed because the vibration and the energy is so high from working on this for a week. We used to do that. Other planets, other aliens or whatever you want to call it from other planets, we used to do that historically, and we've forgotten to do that. We're so divided right now. We're fragmented. And I got a download about it. I don't know how to articulate it on a TikTok, but I got a download the other day that I already know we're all fragmented pieces of the one. But then I saw a puzzle and all the little pieces of the puzzle. So we're individually these little pieces of the puzzle. And I saw them on the table and all weathered and worn and bloated because they got wet and salt. And, so now you're going to try to put these pieces together, and they're not going to go together. And I got the download that we are like those individual pieces. We don't fit together anymore because we've been weathered and worn just through generations of mistreating each other, mistreating the planet, and not believing that our energy is so powerful together as a whole. So when you go to these Mayan or these Joe Dispenzas and we enter these group things, that's why we feel such a high, because that's how powerful we are as a collective.
I also firmly believe that the universe is going to be what you believe it is. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So in this house, the universe is perfect the way that it is. And 7 is actually a big part of why I came to believe that is true. But it's not like spiritual bypassing, not in any way, shape, or form, but because we're doing the work. But also, we understand that we create our own reality here. So as the more we start to believe this, it's interesting. It starts to shift within our friend groups, and then it keeps going. Everything is programming. The words that we speak to each other, the words that we speak to ourselves, this is programming on the mind. The more that we pay attention to the spells that we're casting on ourselves, yes, exactly, then the quicker we will be able to undo it. And once we undo it for ourselves, it's super easy to undo it for others, because then it's just a perceptual shift. But I've noticed that, like, since in our friend group and things like that, we actually can see that we're making huge leaps and bounds as a collective. This is for our friend group, but I've noticed that that's going to start spilling out, because the more that we believe things are changing, the more it's actually changing for humanity. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I tell people, the last video I did was on the politics, and I said, don't get mad at somebody else because you're voting for someone you think is evil, because you're just like them now. You're creating that negative energy now. We all want to just hope for the same thing. We hope for,
and it's fine if somebody doesn't believe it when people tell me, like, you're crazy or whatever. I'm like, okay, that's your right to believe that. Like, you might want to think of a kinder way to say that, but it's totally your right to say that. Like, you're entitled to your opinion. I'm not going to try to change your mind. Like, that's,
that's a great. So what advice do you give to parents when they do hear hurtful, painful comments like this?
Sure. To understand that that person is at a certain place in their journey, and to respect that. And by respecting that, you are giving somebody an example of showing them what wasn't done for them. And when you do that, you have to do it without expectation. This is the challenging thing. But if you do that without expectation, there might be a possibility that that perceptual shift is enough to shift them. And it's happened with us. It's happened. I had this one woman who's like, "You're crazy doing this to your daughter. You should be locked up." And it really, like, that was like, oh my gosh.
I've seen comments like that on your page.
Now I'm just like, whatever. But this woman, I was like, okay, actually have a conversation.
Wait, you say that to a mother? Come on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I also realize, not everybody is where we're at, and that's fine, yeah. But with this woman, I sat down and had a conversation with her, and she was, at the end of it, she was in tears, and she was apologizing to me and said, like, I'm so sorry for the things that I said to you. I was just very incorrect. And that's happened a couple of times, but I don't really do that as much anymore. But yeah, it's just like
encouraging a dialogue, if you have the opportunity, is a good idea. Because this is an opportunity for you to educate.
To learn, yeah, absolutely. And once people see the way that, also people who have met Seven, they're like, okay, like, I don't know. Then they understand, like, okay, because people think I'm coaching her, but then they've had a conversation with her, like, yeah, that's not happening. Because you cannot tell my daughter what to say. She'll be like, no. She is very headstrong in that manner.
Very. The Mercury and Aries people are extremely independent thinking. They're not.
You can't tell her, you have to say this. She'll be like, what?
About them getting in trouble.
Nope. No,
by following the wrong crowd. She ain't doing that.
Yep, she doesn't. She won't. Even to her mom, like, it's just that's not the way she works. So it's kind of funny to me when people say it. I'm like, okay, that's not happening. But yeah, so with people like that, it's just let them be at their stage in their journey and respect that, because you were there at some point too, and.
Absolutely.
And just to remember what that feels like, and to give somebody the respect that you didn't get at that time is really the biggest thing, and that can have the biggest amount of change.
And that's where I want to end this, wrap this up, because I'm sure we'll do more of these again, because there's so much we can talk about. And it sounds like you may be opening yourself up to doing this with others as well. But the idea is that you may be an Indigo child yourself. You may be a StarSeed child yourself, and you may have been shut down when you were younger as well. And you can be adverse to witnessing this because there's an envy that you didn't get a chance. It's triggering you, but you didn't get a chance to have this. And I know it did with me as well. When I was younger, it didn't affect me, because it didn't change me at all, even though my parent tried to squash mine. But take a look at, adults. You're still your inner child. You're still your child too. That your child comes with you everywhere you go. Your younger version of yourself comes with you everywhere you go. Just take a look at, where are you a StarSeed? Where are you an Indigo? Where are you Iranian, as I put it? And why? Just observe that part.
That's beautiful. I just want to say one more thing. This is something that Seven also brought to my awareness, such like the many beautiful things she's brought to my life. She was like, Mom, do you know how powerful you are? And do you know you're a healer too? And you're all of these things. And I was just like, wow. Because I also thought, okay, this is her time to be her. So I stepped back. But she's like, no, you get to do this too. And she's ushering me forward to do my thing and to stand, empowered. That it's, that's such a beautiful gift. We all get to be ourselves. We don't have to change to dim ourselves to be in somebody else's light.
No.
And that's what I think these new kids are bringing forth, that understanding of, you're perfect just the way you are. It's not a competition. It's all just collaboration. That's the thing, that's another thing that Seven doesn't really enjoy, is competitiveness. She always wants to lift everybody else up to help them. So, it's just a different way of doing things than we've ever done here before.
Yeah, we have to look at compassion and connection in the collective rather than competition.
Yeah.
And society doesn't really raise us to be that way. So it takes very strong strength in you to maintain the knowledge that, as Seven says, you're all very, very powerful. And the thing is that sometimes it feels like ego, like, oh, I'm all that in a bag of chips. But the thing is that it's like you telling, and this is in that movie, it's like you telling the radio, the TV station, that they don't. The TV station isn't powerful enough to broadcast.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like, you're a TV station, you're a radio,
Mm-hmm.
you're TV, you're a radio, and the broadcast, the information is already out there in the field.
Mm-hmm.
It's just for you to receive it,
Mm-hmm.
and if you so choose, deliver it.
Yeah. Yeah. And not everybody's going to feel comfortable delivering it, but that's fine. You know, it's also not for everybody at this time. There will be people that hear this podcast and that will resonate with them completely. There will be others that it doesn't, and that's all perfect. Wherever you're at on your journey, if you can take one piece from it, if you can take all of it, it's all perfect. We're not here to judge anybody for what they're doing and where they're at. But I think that's what we're moving towards, and I feel and see it in my own life that it's just by having this level of awareness and this level of understanding for others, that's how we shift things. Small, imperceptible shifts that then continue to move the momentum forward.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kirsten.
Thank you so much, Holly.
I love your energy. I hope we do this again. I think this will be really helpful for a lot of people. Let people know how to get a hold of you again.
Sure. My website is www.psychicbabes.com. And you can also go to my TikTok, www.tiktok.com @PsychicKirsten, PsychicKirsten. 7 is on my TikTok as well for obvious reasons. She doesn't have her own TikTok account, so she's on mine because she's only 7. But you can also, my YouTube and everything is in my LINKT.EE on my TikTok profile. So.
Yeah. And mine is, a lot of people know, Askhollyhall. I'm Askhollyhall everywhere: TikTok, LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube. But and one more final is I've gone through your entire website, and Kirsten, I'm extremely impressed. She does so many things, not just like psychic readings, but healings and energy healing. And there's a phenomenal amount of energy healing that she does. You want to take a look at her website.
So my information just comes straight through and I just speak it out like that. But yeah, I do psychic readings. The kind of healing I do is a little bit different. It's called avatar healings, and this is what my guides brought to me. So you know how, I'll just explain to it really quickly. You know how when you get energy healing for somebody, oftentimes it doesn't really work. And the reason behind that, how they explain it to me, is because just like with a kidney transplant, we experience rejection because the body perceives something foreign to us is working on us, so it rejects it. So the way that I do my healing works on the energy body that's connected directly to source, like in a little triangle like that. So we're working on the energy body. There isn't going to be any rejection because the body isn't perceiving it as foreign to me because it's going through source. Right. So the body assumes it to be normal, that it's healing itself. So in actuality, the person is healing themselves and I'm just the conduit that the information is coming through. So it's actually a very, very beautiful experience and people can actually feel it. There's a little bit of a delay because it goes like the source, like I said, but they can feel it and it's oftentimes very effective. So.
Wow, that's very unique. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Thank you for explaining that. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Mm-hmm. Okay, everyone, you know where to find her. You know where to find me. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Holly.
And your StarSeed children.
Yeah.
Bye, everyone.